Gods cast out, tales of the fallen and forgotten. What could be more terrifying than death for one who cannot die? Oblivion. Imagine this. Thousands of years ago, lightning obeyed command and worlds took shape at a word. Millions called upon divine names, raised temples, and laid offerings at sacred altars. Those names were on every mortal's lips until silence fell. Images were chiseled off stone, shrines crumbled into dust. New gods took the throne, and the old were struck from the record. Some fates were crueler still, not merely forgotten, punished with such ingenuity that eternity itself became a curse. A titan shackled to a cliff, his liver torn out day after day by an eagle for 1,000 uncounted years. A trickster bound in a cavern while venom drips onto his face until the end of time. A king of gods imprisoned underground for devouring his own children. Today brings 5 stories of how mighty deities became outcast within their own pantheons, lessons in the cost of progress, the danger of paranoia, and the truth that even gods are not spared the consequences of their choices. Welcome to Myths of Antiquity. This journey leads through the darkest pages of ancient legend. It is easy to picture gods as eternal and unchanging masters of fate. Zeus on Olympus, Odin in Asgard, Ra in Egypt's sky, but the record tells otherwise. Divinities rose to impossible heights, only to be overthrown, exiled, or simply erased. Why did it happen? What drives a god to acts that earn an everlasting curse? Boundless love for humankind, blind jealousy of a brother, a paralyzing dread of losing power, or the urge to remake the world without grasping the true price of change? Each tale of today is a lesson. Power without wisdom leads to catastrophe. Attempts to escape fate often accomplish it. The noblest intentions can end in ruin, and oblivion can be harsher than any execution. We will walk from Greek cliffs to Egyptian sands, from Nordic fjords to Slavic groves, meeting gods who once shook the foundations of creation and are now known mostly to students of old myth. Ready to learn how even gods become outcasts? Then let the journey into divine tragedy begin. Chapter 1. Prometheus, a benefactor punished for loving humanity. The journey begins in ancient Greece, in an age when the world belonged not to the Olympians, but to those who came before them, the Titans. Picture a world without fire. The first humans shiver in caves, gnaw raw meat, and fear every moving shadow. Weak and unprotected, they live like beasts, until one Titan chooses to help. His name is Prometheus, the foreseer. And he did see. He saw what humanity could become if given the tools to advance. Help required open defiance of Zeus, the new king of gods, fresh from toppling the Titans and enthroning himself over the cosmos. Their first clash came at Mythology, where gods and mortals were to set the share of sacrifices for Olympus. Prometheus took a great bull, split it in two, and offered Zeus a choice, and hid the finest meat beneath the animal's stomach. The other was only white bones wrapped in tempting fat. "Choose, Lord," Prometheus said, knowing Zeus would be lured by appearances. The Thunderer, swayed by first impressions, chose the bones. From that day, mortals offered the inedible portions to the gods and kept the meat. Realizing the trick, Zeus, enraged, stripped humans of fire. "Let them eat raw flesh in cold and darkness," he decreed. Prometheus could not bear the sight of their suffering. He then committed the act that changed human history. He slipped into Hephaestus's forge on Olympus, stole a spark of divine flame, and hid it in a hollow stalk of giant fennel. Imagine that first blaze in human history, the first light punching through primeval dark. Prometheus also held a prophecy. Should Zeus wed the sea nymph Thetis, she would bear a son greater than his father, destined to overthrow him. When the enraged king demanded the secret, Prometheus refused. Zeus's patience snapped. He chose a punishment that would terrify anyone tempted to defy his will. By Zeus's order, Hephaestus, escorted by force and compulsion, carried Prometheus to the Caucasus and chained him to a cliff. Not merely chained, pinned through with adamantine bonds, the hardest metal in existence. The Titan was nailed to the peak, spread beneath scorching sun and freezing winds. That was only the beginning. Each morning, an eagle arrived, no ordinary bird, but a monster born of Typhon and Echidna. The raptor tore open Prometheus's chest and devoured his liver. Each night, the organ grew back, restoring his capacity for pain. Each dawn, the torture returned. Picture that agony, day after day, year after year, century upon century. Accounts say the torment lasted anywhere from 30 to 30,000 years. Zeus swore by the sacred waters of Styx never to free Prometheus, the most binding oath an Olympian can take. But the Titan knew what Zeus did not. His suffering would end. His gift of foresight whispered that one day a hero would break the chains. And humans? With fire, they advanced at astonishing speed. Fire let them cook food, work metals, and fashion tools. Civilization was born. Yet Zeus added a second punishment. He commanded Hephaestus to make the first woman, Pandora. Each Olympian gave her a gift: Aphrodite beauty, Athena skill, Apollo music, and Hermes cunning and a restless curiosity. Pandora was sent to humankind with a sealed jar she must never open. Curiosity prevailed. When she opened it, all the world's woes flew out. Disease, old age, toil, war, lies. Only hope remained at the bottom when she slammed it shut. Deliverance came after long ages. Passing the Caucasus, the hero Heracles saw the Titan's torment, shot the eagle dead, and shattered the chains. Even then, Prometheus wore forever a ring forged from his bonds, set with a chip of that very rock. So Zeus kept his oath, technically unbroken. In exchange for freedom, Prometheus revealed the prophecy about Thetis, and Zeus married her to the mortal Peleus. Their son was Achilles, the greatest of warriors, mortally bound all the same. Prometheus's tale became a symbol of human progress and self-sacrifice. It inspired Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, and ages later, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. It is also a meditation on the price of knowledge. Every breakthrough brings new dangers along with new power. Prometheus gave fire, and with it the capacity both to create and to destroy. Chapter 2. Loki, a trickster who undid his own world. From the sunburnt Mediterranean to the stern north, amid icy fjords and misty forests, unfolds one of myth's most tragic downfalls. Loki was never a conventional god. In a society of Æsir that prized honor, candor, and valor, he embodied wit, change, and unpredictability. Born of the giant Farboti and the goddess Laufey, he became blood brother to Odin himself, not by birth, but by the sacred mingling of blood. For a long while, that strangeness served the gods well. Loki was the indispensable problem solver. When a giant demanded the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freyja as payment for building Asgard's walls, Loki turned into a mare and lured away the builder's magical stallion, voiding the deal. He could take any shape, a fly to steal Freya's necklace, a salmon to escape a chase, an old woman to pry out a secret. His ingenuity saved the gods repeatedly, but in Norse myth, every solution seeds a new problem. The world moves toward Ragnarok, the doom of all things, and even Loki's rescues nudge it closer. The turning point arrived with Baldr. Son of Odin and Frigg, Baldr embodied all that was best among the Æsir, radiant as a summer day, wise as ancient runes, kind as mother love. Not only gods but humans, beasts, even plants loved him. He was the living emblem of light and hope. Yet in a world fated to die, even light can be a problem. Baldr began to dream of his own death, a sign that Ragnarok drew near. Frigg, his devoted mother, set out to protect him at any cost. She traversed all creation, from Asgard to Hel, from mountain peaks to seafloor depths, extracting an oath from every creature, every metal, every stone and plant, never to harm Baldr. Fire vowed not to burn him, water not to drown him, iron not to wound him. Convinced her son was safe, the gods turned it into sport. At their assemblies, they hurled stones, loosed arrows, and swung swords. Everything glanced off as if from an unseen shield. Baldr laughed, the gods cheered, even grim Odin allowed a smile. All but Loki. He saw more than a game. If Baldr was truly invulnerable, change would end, and a world without change has no renewal, no growth, no future. In a sense, Baldr had become an obstacle to the order of things. Disguised as an old woman, Loki visited Frigg and inquired about the oaths. "Did everything swear?" he asked mildly. "Everything," she said, "although there is one plant, the mistletoe growing on an oak west of Valhalla. It seemed too young and harmless to bind with an oath mistletoe. A tiny parasite living on mighty oaks, a sign of life even in winter, became the instrument of tragedy. Loki cut a sprig and sharpened it into a dart, then returned to the merriment. Apart from the crowd stood Höder, Baldr's blind brother. He took no part. What joy is there in throwing at a target one cannot see? "Why not honor your brother?" Loki asked. "It is discourteous. Here, take this dart. I will guide your hand unsuspecting." Höder took the mistletoe. Loki guided his aim. The dart flew true and pierced Baldr's chest. When the god of light fell dead, the world changed forever. The sun dimmed behind cloud. Joy turned to horror. All knew then Baldr's death meant Ragnarok was inevitable. A great funeral followed. Gods, humans, and giants gathered. Even enemies came to pay respects. His body was burned on a ship with his horse and treasures, and the pyre was seen across all 9 worlds. Hel, queen of the dead, agreed to release Baldr on one condition, that all living things weep for him. They did. Gods, people, animals, birds, even stones and trees shed tears. All but a giantess named Thuk in a mountain cave. "Thuk will weep with dry eyes for Baldr," she rasped. "Neither in life nor death did I find any use in him. Let Hel keep what she holds." Of course, of course, it was Loki again in another guise. Then the Æsir knew the true culprit. Odin's wrath rose like a winter mountain storm. They seized Loki, and the punishment surpassed all before it. First, they turned one of Loki's sons, Vali, into a mad wolf, who tore apart his brother Nari. From the entrails of the slain child, they twisted cords and bound Loki beneath 3 jagged rocks in a deep cave. Over his face they hung a venomous serpent. The poison dripped onto him, burning agony into his flesh. His faithful wife Sigyn sat beside him, catching the poison in a bowl. But when she had to empty it, drops splashed onto Loki's eyes. He writhed so violently that the earth itself shuddered, so the Norse explained earthquakes. Loki will suffer until Ragnarok. When the last battle comes, he will break free and lead giants and monsters against his former kin. The one who once saved the gods will become their destroyer. Loki's tale is not only one of betrayal and revenge, but a parable about change itself, its price, and how necessary shifts can look like evil to those invested in the old order. Chapter 3. Set, a protector recast as evil. The journey ends in the Nile Valley, where one of Antiquity's most complex and contested divine dramas unfolded beneath pitiless desert sun. Set may be the most misunderstood god in history. Moderns know him as villain, fratricide, embodiment of chaos and destruction. That image is the product of millennia of demonization. Originally, he was something else entirely. In early Egypt, Set was revered as a mighty defender, a god of strength and warlike prowess. Each night, he stood on the prow of the sun's bark to fight Apophis, the colossal serpent of primordial chaos seeking to swallow the sun on its underworld voyage. Without Set, the sun would not rise. Without his might, the world would sink into endless night. He defended order from true chaos. His brother Osiris ruled as the ideal king, just and wise, bringer of agriculture and civilization. At first, there was no mortal enmity between them. Osiris built order. Set defended it. So what went wrong? Accounts differ. Earliest texts speak of rivalry for Egypt's throne. Later sources add jealousy. Osiris lay with Set's wife Nephthys, begetting Anubis. Others tell of an accidental killing on a hunt that Set then tried to conceal. The most familiar version, recorded by Plutarch, tells of a cunning trap. Set commissioned a sumptuous sarcophagus inlaid with gold and gems, sized exactly to Osiris. He held a grand feast and invited his brother and many guests. During the revel, Set displayed the chest. "Behold this masterpiece. Whoever fits it perfectly shall have it as a gift." One by one the guests lay down in task. For each it was too large or too small. At last Osiris tried. He fit as if it were made for him. Set slammed the lid and fastened the locks. 72 accomplices, a number some linked to the sun's tilt against the ecliptic, helped hoist the chest and hurl it into the Nile. The river bore it to the sea until it washed ashore at Byblos and was enfolded by a great tree. Set underestimated love. Isis, Osiris's wife, refused to accept loss. Taking the form of a bird, she searched the known world. Finding the chest, she smuggled it back to Egypt and hid it in the delta marshes. When Set learned the body was found, rage seized him. He discovered and hacked it to pieces, variously 14, 16, or 42, and scattered them across Egypt. "Try resurrecting him now," he cried. Sure he had won. Even this did not stop Isis. With Nephthys' help, she traveled the land and gathered each part, save one, the phallus, eaten by the Oxyrhynchus fish. She fashioned a replacement of gold and wax, wrapped the body in linen, the first mummy. Through mighty magic, she conceived a son by her dead husband, Horus. Osiris rose again, but not to the world of living. He became Lord of Duat, judge of the dead. The boy Horus grew with one aim, avenge his father and reclaim the rightful throne. Thus began the long contendings of Horus and Set. For 80 years, a symbolic, full human lifetime, they fought in many forms, as men, as hippos, as bulls. In one clash, Set tore out Horus's left eye, the eye of Horus. In another, Horus castrated Set, depriving him of virility and heirs. At last, the gods tired of war and convened a tribunal under Ra. Even divine judgment proved slow. Many gods backed Set, experienced, a defender of the sun bark, versed in rule while Horus was young and untried. Ra himself wavered between hereditary justice and practical governance. Isis brought the solution through cunning. Disguised as a beautiful woman, she told Set a parable of a man whose brother was slain by a stranger who seized the inheritance. Outraged, Set declared the usurper must be condemned, whereupon Isis revealed herself. "You have judged yourself." The court awarded the throne to Horus. Set lost not only the crown, but his place in Egypt's official pantheon. From guardian, he became an outcast, lord of deserts and foreign lands. The final demonization came later. When the Hyksos, Semitic peoples from Asia, invaded, they took Set as patron, identifying him with Baal. To Egyptians, that was unforgivable. Their old god had sided with conquerors. After the Hyksos were driven out, a campaign of erasure began. Priests chiseled his images from temple walls, toppled statues, and scraped his name from texts. Damnatio memoria, the curse of forgetting, was the harshest penalty in Egyptian culture. Greeks equated him with Typhon. Christians folded him into the devil's forms. Set's tragedy shows how politics reshapes religion. A defender became a symbol of evil, not through a change of essence, but through history's turns. Ancient myth seldom deals in absolutes. Gods combine qualities required to keep the cosmic balance. Set's fate lay less in villainy than in humanity's forgetting his first role. Chapter 4. Cronus, a father who devoured the future. Back to the ancient world, further still to the age of the Titans, the golden time of humanity and one of myth's most horrifying family dramas. Cronus' story begins with his father, Uranus, first lord of the cosmos, whose fear of his own children made fatherhood a torture for the whole family. The offspring were terrifying indeed. 12 Titans, tall as mountains, 3 Cyclopes with a single eye, and the craft to forge lightning, 3 Hecatoncheires, 100-handed beings whose strength could shake creation. Seeing only a threat to his rule, Uranus forced each newborn back into their mother Gaia's womb. Imagine the agony of Earth Mother, unable to bring forth her children, and the torment of Titans, trapped in darkness, growing without light or freedom. Gaia's endurance broke. She forged a sickle of adamant and asked her children, "Who will avenge this cruelty?" Only the youngest, Cronus, dared take up the blade. When Uranus came to Gaia again, the sun struck and unmanned his father. From the blood that fell were born the Furies, avengers of crimes against kin, an omen Cronus chose to ignore. Cronus freed his Titan siblings and seized the universe, but he thrust the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires back into Tartarus, fearing their power as his father had, an early sign of a ruler corrupted by dread. At first, his reign was a true golden age, no wars among peoples, the earth yielding fruit without toil, lives lived in peace and plenty, without hunger, disease, or harsh age, old age arriving like gentle sleep. Yet the dying Uranus had spoken a curse. As you overthrew me, so you will be overthrown by your own son. Some say Gaia and Delphi confirmed it. Fate was cast, and Cronus's struggle to escape it forged the tragedy. When his wife Rhea bore their first child, Hestia, the future hearth goddess, the prophecy returned to haunt him. Fear ate him alive. Each glance at the infant looked like a future coup. Each cry sounded like doom. Cronus chose the monstrous answer. He snatched the newborn from Rhea's arms and swallowed her whole. He did not chew them. He gulped at them alive. Inside him they remained conscious, growing in that living prison. Imagine their torment. Awakening gaze enclosed in their father's flesh, hatred ripening with every moment. One by one Rhea's children were born and devoured. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Rhea begged and swore they would never harm him. But Cronus was unyielding, the oracle hanging over him like a sword. Pregnant with her sixth, Rhea knew it had to end. Following Gaia's counsel, she slipped to Crete, to the sacred Dactyn, where nymphs and Curetes guarded her as she bore Zeus. She entrusted the infant to the goat Amalthea, whose milk sustained the future king. The Curetes danced around the cradle, clashing shields to drown out his cries. To Cronus, she brought a stone wrapped in swaddling. Numbed by paranoia and ritual, he did not look. He swallowed the bundle whole. Zeus grew on Crete, knowing the truth of his man-eating father. When he came of age, he returned not in secret, but in open challenge. With help from the ocean-eyed Métis, he forced Cronus to drink a powerful emetic. Never had Cronus retched so violently. He spewed up the children in reverse order, the stone first, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, emerging as fully armed adults, burning for justice. Thus began the Titanomachy, a 10-year war that shook the world. Not all Titans stood with Cronus. Prometheus, Themis, and the Oceanid Styx joined the Olympians, a civil war in the divine family. The turning point was Zeus freeing the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires from Tartarus, the very beings Cronus had imprisoned. The Cyclopes forged divine weapons, thunderbolts for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, a helm of invisibility for Hades. The 100-handed hurled whole mountains. Cronus fought desperately, knowing defeat meant not only loss of power, but payment for tyranny and cannibalism. Fate would not bend. The fallen Titan was hurled into the deepest Tartarus, chained among the defeated and guarded by the very Hecatoncheires he once confined. Irony completed the circle. The jailer of his children was himself, buried in Earth's abyss. Some versions say he was cut to pieces, others that he came to rule the Isles of the Blessed, still others that he wandered as a god of time, forever roving. Cronus's tale is a study in self-fulfilling prophecy. Fearing his son's uprising, he created the enemy who would depose him. It is also a warning about fear's power to corrupt natural bonds. Cronus was a good ruler until dread of the future made him monstrous. Chapter 5. Chernobog, a shadow dissolved in oblivion. From the frozen north to the mysterious forests of old Slavia, among ancient oaks and birch groves, bogs and swift rivers, unfolds perhaps the most enigmatic disappearance of a god. First, a caution. Chernobog is among the most contested figures in world mythology. Knowledge is scant and rests chiefly on a single source, the chronicle of the German priest Helmold of Bosau, writing in the 12th century about West Slavic peoples. Helmold claimed Slavs worshipped two gods, a benevolent one he left unnamed, and an evil one, Chernobog. But Helmold was a Christian missionary viewing pagan beliefs through his own lens, and he wrote about 2 centuries after most Slavic lands had been Christianized, relying on second-hand accounts. Modern scholars doubt Chernobog held a central place in a Slavic pantheon at all. Perhaps the name reflects a regional tradition or a Christian simplification of a complex web of natural forces into an easy good versus evil. If Chernobog existed, he likely was not a Slavic Satan. Slavic cosmology did not frame evil as an absolute in the Christian sense. Nature's forces were parts of a necessary whole: winter for spring, death for birth, destruction for creation. By scholarly reconstruction, Chernobog may have personified the dark yet necessary side of nature: winter that clears fields for planting, the death of the old that makes way for the new, the breaking of spent forms to allow life to return. Picture a Slavic villager 1,000 years ago, living by the season's sense and power. Spring belongs to youthful deities who wake the earth, summer to Dajbog and Mokosh, who bring the harvest, autumn to Veles, who gathers the fruit of labor, and winter is Chernobog's time, god of necessary rest, cleansing, and preparation for the cycle to turn again. In such a world, Chernobog was not the enemy of light, but its complement. Night that makes day precious, sonce that gives sound its meaning, darkness without which light loses sense. History broke that harmony. When Christianity arrived, the new faith needed to reinterpret old gods. Bright deities could be reframed as saints or angels, but what of a god whose very name contains black? Missionaries chose the simple path, casting Chernobog as a local devil, warping his original nature. From a cosmic force maintaining balance, he became a cipher for absolute evil. The change was gradual. Fear replaced reverence. His name became taboo. He who is not named, or simply the Black One. His roles in the seasonal cycle faded, leaving only a source of misfortune. His image blurred. Folk tales reduced him to faceless malice. Christian homilies filed him among the devil's names. His attributes and functions scattered into other figures of folklore. Chernobog's true tragedy was not mythic, but cultural. He was punished not by other gods, but by history itself, by a religious transformation that left no room for nuanced pagan concepts in a simplified moral scheme. Today, his name survives largely thanks to 19th century romantic reconstructions, video games, and fantasy fiction, modern inventions rather than a faithful face of the ancestors' deity. It is possible the real Chernobog never existed as popularly imagined. Perhaps he was a cluster of local spirits, grouped under one label, or merely the product of a medieval author's imprecision. Chernobog's story teaches how easily sources distort reality, an admonition to treat ancient texts with care, and a reminder that victors write history, even mythic history. This is also a different kind of fall, not a dramatic overthrow in heaven, but a slow dissolution in time's current and cultural change. Chernobog was not struck down by Perun's thunder, but by forgetfulness that erased his meaning. All that remains is guesswork. His true face lies hidden beneath layers of later interpretation, Christian recasting, and modern fantasy. The bitter irony is this: the god of darkness did not vanish fighting the light, but in the fog of historical uncertainty. Conclusion. So ends the passage through the darkest chapters of divine history, from Greek cliffs, where Prometheus suffered, to Egyptian sands, where Set was demonized, from Nordic fjords, where Loki writhed, to Slavic groves, where Chernobog dissolved into doubt, from a titanic prison where Cronus was cast down. 5 tales, 5 tragedies, 5 lessons about the thin line between greatness and ruin, reverence and oblivion. What binds these fallen gods? At first glance, nothing. Prometheus paid for boundless love of humankind. Loki for change that others feared. Chernobog may be a historian's misunderstanding. Cronus perished by his own paranoia set by political shifts. The common thread is this: even divine power cannot shield one from the consequences of one's deeds, and myths are not static stories, but living mirrors of how different ages understand the world, good and evil, justice and punishment. Prometheus teaches that progress demands sacrifice. Loki, that change is painful, yet necessary. Chernobog, that sources must be weighed critically. Cronus, that fear of the future corrodes the present. Set, that politics writes theology. Most striking of all, these fallen gods still live among us as symbols. Prometheus inspires scientists and inventors. Loki stands for creative chaos and the modern anti-hero. Even the disputed Chernobog has found new life in fantasy. Cronus gave a name to time itself. Set reminds us to judge historical figures with care. Fall is not an ending, but a transformation. Gods do not truly die. They become archetypes and lessons for those to come. Ancient myths endure because human nature has not changed. We still fear tomorrow like Cronus, envy like Set, sacrifice like Prometheus, break rules for necessary change like Loki, and too often judge the past with partial evidence, as with Chernobog. Which story is most instructive? What parallels appear in the modern world? Who among them deserves forgiveness or a second chance? Share thoughts in the comments. Every reflection helps connect ancient myth to present life. If this journey into myth's darker side intrigued, like the video and subscribe to Myths of Antiquity. More riddles await. Exiled gods, lost civilizations, hidden cults. History is written not only by the victors, but by those willing to hear the voices of the defeated. Until next time.